We were supposed to be having fun. It was just a haunted house at a theme park, an escape from the mundane, for a few hours of manufactured fright. You pay for the privilege of being scared, of course, but it's supposed to be a safe fear. A controlled adrenaline rush with a guaranteed exit. But then we heard it, a woman crying in the distance. And in the suffocating darkness of that maze, we realized she wasn't part of the show, and the exit was no longer guaranteed. The air was thick with popcorn and fog machines, a sweet, synthetic perfume clinging to the humid October night. This was our annual tradition, a pilgrimage to the epicenter of commercialized terror. For me, Liam, and Chloe, it was the highlight of our autumn. The park was alive, a throbbing, neon-drenched organism of controlled chaos. The distant screams from roller coasters blended with the thumping bass of themed music, creating a symphony of pure, unadulterated fun. Liam, ever the pragmatist, was already dissecting the logistics of the express passes he'd bought. He approached horror like a math problem to be solved with efficiency and logic. For him, fear was a chemical reaction, a series of predictable stimuli. He loved pointing out the speakers hidden in the bushes, or guessing where the actors were hiding. He wasn't a skeptic because he didn't believe. He was a fan of the craft. He saw the strings on the puppets and admired the skill of the puppeteer. Chloe was his polar opposite. She was here to be terrified. She jumped at every costumed actor who lurched out of the fog, her shrieks turning into infectious laughter a moment later. She fed on the crowd's energy, her excitement pulling us along in its wake. She loved the thrill of the chase, the gasp of a good jump scare, that feeling of her heart hammering against her ribs, all from the safety of knowing it was just an elaborate, expensive game. And me? I was somewhere in the middle. I appreciated the artistry like Liam, but I craved the immersion Chloe sought. I was a connoisseur of fear, a student of the genre. I wanted to believe, just for a moment, that the monsters were real. I wanted to lose myself in the narrative, to feel that primal panic our ancestors must have felt when they saw a predator in the shadows. We'd already conquered werewolves and vampires, navigated zombie-infested cities, and fled from chainsaw-wielding maniacs in corn mazes. We had the routine down. But this year, a new attraction had been hyped for months, whispered about in online forums with a mix of reverence and dread. La Llorona, the weeping curse. Even from a distance, its facade was imposing. This wasn't some gothic mansion or creepy asylum. The park's promo material boasted that designers drew inspiration from a real 1600s mission church in San Antonio. It was hauntingly beautiful and deeply unsettling. Two tall, silent bell towers flanked a massive, cavernous doorway. The adobe-like walls were stained with age, and barred windows on the upper floors created a disturbing optical illusion. From just the right angle, the shadows on the bars looked like a screaming face. The legend of La Llorona was one I knew well, a chilling piece of folklore that has haunted the Americas for centuries. The story has countless variations, with roots that some historians think trace back to pre-Hispanic Aztec figures. The most common version tells of a woman named Maria who, in a fit of rage after being abandoned by her lover, drowned her own children in a river. Now, consumed by guilt, her spirit is condemned to wander the earth, forever weeping and searching for them. They say if you hear her cry, "Hey, Miss Hee-Hoes, oh my children," you are to run, because she might mistake you for one of her own and drag you to a watery grave. It's a story born of tragedy and loss, but also one used as a cautionary tale to keep kids away from dark rivers and out of trouble. The park's creative director had talked about their commitment to cultural authenticity, about respecting the legend's dark, complex roots to create an experience that was not just scary, but felt like a child's nightmare. As we got closer, the park's general din faded, replaced by a low, mournful soundscape. No loud music here, Just the sound of wind whistling through unseen canyons and the faint, almost subliminal sound of a woman crying. It was a masterpiece of atmospheric design. Liam was already impressed. "The parabolic speakers are perfectly placed," he murmured, pointing towards the crumbling archways. "They're projecting the sound so it feels like it's coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Genius." Chloe hugged her arms around herself, a genuine shiver running through her. "Okay, this one already feels different," she whispered, her voice tight with a mix of fear and excitement. "This feels heavy." She was right. The air here was colder. The manufactured fog seemed to cling to the ground, thicker and more menacing. Even the queue, snaking through a mock cemetery, felt less like a waiting area and more like a procession towards something final. We stood there, shuffling forward, the three of us falling into a rare silence. The laughter had died in our throats, replaced by a shared, unspoken anticipation. We were on the threshold of the story, about to step into the nightmare they had so carefully constructed. We were ready to be scared. We just didn't understand what kind of scary we had signed up for. The transition from the theme park to the world of La Llorona was abrupt and absolute. One moment we were in line, surrounded by nervous chatter, and the next we were pushed through a heavy wooden door into near total darkness. The door slammed shut behind us with a terrifying finality. For a moment, there was nothing. No light, no sound, just the suffocating blackness and the sudden, chilling intimacy of being trapped. Then, a single flickering lantern sputtered to life, casting long, dancing shadows across what looked like the inside of a dilapidated chapel. The air was cold and musty, smelling of damp earth, rotting wood and something else. Something metallic and vaguely sweet, like old blood. My eyes struggled to adjust. The walls were crumbling stone, slick with moisture. Empty alcoves that once might have held saints were now just filled with shadows. A figure stood before us, a park employee dressed as a monk, his face hidden in a deep cowl. In a low, gravelly voice, he recited a short warning about the weeping woman. "Stick to the path," he rasped. "Do not stray. And if you hear her cries, do not listen. Her grief is a trap." Liam, ever the analyst, leaned over to me. "Classic misdirection," he whispered, a smirk in his voice. "Telling us not to listen means the sound cues are the main way they'll guide and disorient us." Smart. Chloe wasn't analyzing anything. She had a death grip on Liam's arm, her knuckles white. She just nodded, her eyes wide and fixed on the darkness beyond the monk. The monk gestured towards a narrow, dark corridor. "The path begins. May God have mercy on your souls." With that, he just vanished. He didn't walk away. He stepped back into a shadow and was gone. A simple trick of lighting and a hidden door, I knew. But damn, it was effective. The game was on. We took our first tentative steps into the corridor, our shoulders brushing against the rough, damp stone. It was claustrophobic, forcing us into a single file line. I was in the middle, with Liam ahead and Chloe right behind. And that's when we heard it for the first time. Clear and unmistakable. A woman's sob. It wasn't like the atmospheric crying outside. This was different. Sharp, filled with a raw, piercing pain that cut through the air. It sounded close. Dangerously close. "Wow, the sound system in here is incredible," Liam said, his voice echoing slightly. "Sounds like it's right in my ear." But it didn't sound like it was in my ear. It sounded like it was right behind Chloe. She let out a small, terrified gasp and pushed forward, bumping into me. "Something touched my hair," she hissed, her voice trembling. "It's just the props, Chloe," Liam said from the front. "They probably have strings hanging from the ceiling. Standard stuff." I glanced back, but the darkness was absolute. I couldn't see Chloe's face, only her silhouette against the faint light from the chapel, which was rapidly disappearing. I reached the hand back and she grabbed it instantly. Her hand was icy cold. The corridor opened into a small, square room, a mock-up of a rustic village home. A simple wooden table and chairs stood in the center, and a cradle, ominously empty, sat in a dark corner. The crying was louder here. A continuous, heartbreaking loop of sorrow. And then another sound joined it. A soft, gentle humming. A lullaby. Suddenly, a door on the far side of the room slammed open, and a figure lunged out. It was a grotesque mockery of a person. Its face twisted in a permanent scream. Classic jump scare. And it worked. Chloe screamed, a genuine, throat-tearing scream. Liam jumped back with a surprised curse. I flinched hard, my heart rocketing into my throat. We all stumbled backward in a tangle of limbs. A chaotic mess of panic. In that brief, disorienting moment, Chloe's hand was ripped from mine. The scare actor retreated, its job done. The door slammed shut. The whole thing lasted maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, everything changed. When the chaos subsided, I scrambled back to my feet. "Liam?" I called out, my voice shaky. "Yeah, I'm here." His voice came from a few feet away. "That was a good one. You okay, Chloe?" Silence. "Chloe." Liam called again, a new edge to his voice. The room was still dark, but I could make out the basic shapes. The table. The chairs. The cradle. Liam was standing near the far wall, but Chloe was gone. The corridor we'd just come from was empty. Another dark passage had opened up on the other side of the room. She must have run through it in the panic. "We have to go after her," I said, already moving toward the new passage. "Wait up," Liam said, but his voice sounded farther away than it should have. I turned and saw he was heading down a different corridor that had opened near the scare actor. "Liam, no, this way," I yelled. "I think she went this way. I saw her run this way," he shouted back, his voice already muffled. "Just meet at the end." And just like that, we were separated. The maze had splintered our group with terrifying efficiency. I stood alone in the center of the room with the empty cradle, the sound of the weeping woman filling the silence. The humming had stopped. Now it was just the crying. For the first time that night, a sliver of genuine, cold fear lodged itself in my chest. This wasn't a shared experience anymore. The first rule had been broken, and I was alone. The silence left in Liam's wake was more deafening than any scream. The maze, which had felt like an adventure moments before, now felt like a tomb designed just for me. The crying was my only companion, a constant loop reminding me of the story I was trapped in. It was a brilliant piece of sound design, I told myself. It was meant to make me feel isolated. It was working. I chose the corridor I thought Chloe had taken, plunging into a passage even narrower and darker than the last. The walls here were different, no longer rough stone, but a smooth, cold surface like packed mud. The air grew heavier, thick with the smell of river water and wet leaves. I was following the story beat by beat. My hand trailed along the wall, a desperate need for a physical anchor in the dark. My fingers brushed against something soft and stringy. I recoiled, thinking it was a spiderweb, but curiosity got the better of me. I reached out again. It was hair. A long, coarse strand of what felt unnervingly like human hair, embedded in the mud. A prop, I told myself, my heart beginning to hammer. It's just a prop. A very realistic, very disgusting prop. The corridor widened, and the floor became soft and uneven. I was walking on sand. The sound of the weeping grew louder, more desperate. It was no longer a general atmospheric loop. It had a direction now. It was coming from ahead and to my left. A beacon pulling me forward. The monk's warning echoed in my head. Her grief is a trap. But what choice did I have? Standing still felt like surrender. I emerged into a larger, more open space. It was a riverbank at night. The fog was so thick it was like wading through smoke. Gnarled, leafless trees clawed at the air like skeletal fingers. The path was a narrow strip of sand next to a channel of black, still water. I was completely alone. No other guests in sight. Had we really gotten that far ahead? Or was the maze designed to filter people down different paths, to ensure a solitary experience? The Liam part of my brain tried to cling to that technical admiration, but the rest of my brain was screaming. I scanned the opposite riverbank, my eyes straining against the gloom. And then I saw it. Not a jump scare. Not an actor. Just a shape. A tall, slender silhouette of white, standing motionless among the twisted trees. It was far away, indistinct, almost a trick of the light. A woman. Her head was bowed, her long, dark hair hiding her face. She wore a simple, long white dress. She didn't move. But I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that it was her. My breath caught in my throat. I stood frozen. This was it. The centerpiece. An animatronic, I reasoned. A very advanced one, designed for a slow burn reveal. The distance, the fog, it was all part of the staging. I took a tentative step forward. My eyes locked on the figure, and it moved. It wasn't a lurch or a jump. Her head lifted slowly, agonizingly. I couldn't see her face. It was still lost in shadow and hair, but I could feel her gaze lock onto me across the water. And the crying, which had been a constant environmental sound, suddenly snapped into focus. It was coming from her. The sound wasn't a recording. It was real, raw, and it was directed at me. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. My mind was a frantic whirlwind. It's an actor. A very committed actor. They have speakers on them. This is the show. This is what you paid for. But my body wasn't listening. My legs suddenly remembered how to move. I turned and scrambled down the path, away from the figure, my feet slipping in the sand. The path twisted away from the river, leading into another crypt-like structure. The walls were lined with tombs, their stone lids slightly ajar. From within, I could see the dim, flickering lights of trapped souls. The air was filled with whispers. Iodame, no puedo salir. El Rio, help me, I can't get out. The river, it was all part of the show. Her other victims. But as I hurried past one of the tombs, a pale, grimy hand shot out from the gap, its fingers grasping for me. I yelled, a short, sharp cry of pure shock, and stumbled away. The hand was still, its fingers twitching slightly. A prop, a pneumatic device. It had to be. But the hand didn't retract. It just stayed there, reaching. I didn't wait. I fled deeper into the maze, the sound of the weeping woman following me, her cries echoing in the stone corridors, seeming to come from all directions at once. The whispers from the tombs grew louder, more desperate, as if my fear were feeding them. I stumbled through a series of rotting chambers, each more decrepit than the last. The details were exquisite and terrifying. Water dripped from the ceilings. In one room, a long dining table was set for a feast, but the food was a molded, maggot-infested mess. In another, children's toys were scattered across the floor, covered in dust and what looked like dried blood. It was like walking through a nightmare. And then I heard a new sound. Not the crying, not the whispers. A child's laughter. It was coming from just around the next corner. It was a light, innocent sound, but in this place, it was the most terrifying thing I had heard all night. I peered cautiously around the corner. The corridor opened into a small alcove, like a child's bedroom. Sitting on the floor, her back to me, was a small figure in a simple dress, playing with wooden blocks. She was humming the same lullaby from the first room. "Hello?" I called out, my voice a whisper. This had to be an actor. A child actor? No, they wouldn't, would they? The small figure didn't turn around. She just kept humming. "Are you lost?" I asked, taking a hesitant step forward. The humming stopped. The girl's head tilted to the side at an unnatural angle. "I'm not lost," she said, her voice unnervingly clear and sweet. "She knows where I am. She's coming for me." A cold dread washed over me. She? You mean Llorona? The girl slowly got to her feet and turned to face me. Her face was pale and doll-like. Her eyes wide, dark, and empty. She wasn't a child. Her face was too old, her movements too smooth. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her sweet voice now laced with something sharp. "She doesn't like visitors." "I'm just trying to find my friends," I stammered. "I need to find the way out." The girl smiled, a thin, tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her dead eyes. "I know the way out," she said, pointing down a dark passage to my right. "It's a secret path. I can show you." Hope, desperate and stupid, flickered within me. A shortcut? Maybe this was a planned encounter, an NPC to help guests who got separated. "Follow me," she said, and turned and walked into the darkness. Against my better judgment, against every primal scream in my head, I followed. The passage was pitch black. I couldn't see the girl, but I could hear her small footsteps ahead, and the soft, chilling sound of her humming the lullaby once more. The weeping had stopped. Then, the girl's footsteps stopped. The humming stopped. "We're here," her voice whispered, right beside my ear. I squinted into the oppressive blackness. The passage had opened into some kind of dead-end chamber. And we were not alone. A low, gurgling sob echoed in the small space. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was her, Llorona. She was no longer a distant silhouette. She was here, less than 10 feet away. Her white dress was tattered and soaked. Her long black hair was matted and wet, covering her face. I turned to run, but the girl was standing in the entrance, blocking my path, smiling that same dead-eyed smile. "I found one for you, Mother," she whispered. The figure in white lifted her head, and for the first time I saw her face. It was a pale, gaunt mask of eternal agony. Her eyes were sunken pits of shadow, streaming black tears. Her mouth opened, wider than humanly possible, and a sound erupted from it, not a cry of grief, but a shriek of pure, predatory rage. This was no animatronic. This was no actor. My mind finally broke, the last bits of rational thought dissolving into pure terror. This was real. The trap had sprung. I was her child now, and she had come to take me home. The shriek that tore from Llorona's throat was a physical force. It hit me like a shockwave, vibrating through my bones. It was a sound of absolute despair and bottomless fury. My hands flew to my ears, a futile gesture against a sound that felt like it was coming from inside my own skull. My gaze flickered between the monster and the child. The girl was the bait, and I was the fool who had listened. Llorona took a step forward, her movements jerky and unnatural. The smell of the river, of decay and stagnant water, was overwhelming. She raised a hand, her fingers long and skeletal, reaching for me. "Niña," she rasped, her voice a guttural parody of a mother's call. "Mi niña." My mind, once a storm of panic, found a single sharp point of focus. Survival. The analytical part of me was dead, replaced by a purely animal instinct to flee. I was prey. I wasn't getting past the girl, but to my left, the stone wall was crumbling. A section of it was dark, rotting wood. It wasn't a door, But it was a weakness, a chance. Without a second thought, I lunged, throwing my entire body against the decaying wood. For a heart-stopping second, it held. Then, with a splintering crack, it gave way. I tumbled through, landing hard on a cold, wet floor, the impact knocking the wind out of me. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain. I had broken through into another room, but my relief was short-lived. I hadn't found a backstage area. I had found the heart of the nightmare. It was a vast, cavernous, flooded chapel. A shallow layer of black water covered the entire floor. Stone pews rose from the dark water like rows of ancient teeth. At the far end, a shattered altar stood beneath a massive, broken, stained glass window depicting a weeping saint. Dim, blue light filtered through, illuminating the thick fog that swirled just above the water's surface. It was horrifyingly beautiful, a cathedral of sorrow. The shriek came again, closer this time. I spun around. Llorona was stepping through the hole I had made, her movements fluid and impossibly fast now. She was hunting. The child was gone. It was just her and me. She entered the water, gliding over its surface, her soaked dress trailing behind her like a shroud. She was faster than me. I couldn't outrun her. My eyes darted around, searching for an exit. The main doors were massive and undoubtedly sealed. But on the side wall, near the shattered altar, I saw it. A single, small, metal door. It was plain, with a red exit sign flickering erratically above it. A service exit. A real door. A way out of the game. It was my only hope. I took off. My sneakers splashed frantically in the shallow water, the cold liquid soaking my jeans. The water created a drag, making my legs feel like lead. The sound of her gliding across the water was right behind me. A sibilant, terrifying whisper. I could hear her weeping, the sound changing again to choked, gasping sobs, as if she were right behind my shoulder. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't. I knew if I saw her face again, I would freeze. I focused everything on that red sign. It was my salvation. I dodged around a pew, my hip slamming into the wet stone. Pushing off the pain, I vaulted over a smaller, broken one, my hands slipping on the slimy surface. No te vayas, her voice sobbed behind me. Don't go. The plea was so full of genuine anguish it almost made me hesitate. The artistry of it, the actor's commitment. A tiny, rational part of my brain fought to surface, but I shoved it back down. The fear was real. The chase was real. Halfway there, 50 feet, 40. I risked a glance backward. It was a mistake. She was barely 10 feet away, her arms outstretched. And her eyes, they weren't empty shadows anymore. I could see them. They were glowing with a faint, pale light, like embers in a dying fire. I screamed, a raw, wordless sound of pure terror, and pushed myself harder, my lungs burning. The water seemed to get deeper, trying to hold me back. 20 feet. 10. I could see the panic bar on the metal door. I lunged, my hands outstretched. My feet slipped, and I fell forward, my body crashing into the door with a loud bang. My hands found the bar. I pushed. The latch clicked, loud as a gunshot. I threw the door open and stumbled through, falling out of the nightmare and into the shocking banality of the real world. I landed on rough, unforgiving concrete. The door slammed shut behind me, its pneumatic hinge cutting off the weeping with an abrupt hiss. The silence was absolute. I lay there for a moment, a trembling, adrenaline-saturated wreck, my chest heaving. I was in a narrow, brightly lit corridor, unpainted cinder block walls, thick electrical cables along the ceiling. The air smelled of dust and ozone. A backstage hallway. A non-space. The transition was so sudden it gave me vertigo. One moment, a 17th century haunted chapel. The next, a utility closet. The fluorescent lights hummed with an almost aggressive normalcy. Slowly, I pushed myself into a sitting position. My clothes were soaked from the knee down. My arm throbbed. I looked at my hands. They were scraped raw and bleeding from the fall. The pain was real. The water was real. A wave of confusion washed over me. What had just happened? I'd been in a haunted house. A simulation. But my terror hadn't felt simulated. Had the effects really been that good? Had they used something in the fog machines? Or had I just had a panic attack? My own imagination running wild. A door at the end of the hall opened, and a park employee in a bright polo shirt walked in. Carrying a clipboard, he stopped dead when he saw me, his expression a perfect mix of annoyance and weary resignation. "Hey, pal," he said, his voice flat. "You're not supposed to be back here. Staff only." I got lost," I stammered. "There was this thing, this woman," he sighed, a long, drawn-out sound. "Yeah, she's something else, isn't she? The actors for the Llorona house are really committed this year. Come on, let's get you out of here." He offered me a hand and pulled me to my feet. I was unsteady, but he didn't seem to notice or care about my scraped hands or soaked jeans. To him, I was just another customer who got turned around. He led me through another door. And suddenly we were back in the park. The noise hit me first, the music, the laughter, the distant screams. It was the same symphony, but now it sounded jarring and alien. I saw Liam and Chloe standing near the attraction's exit, under a big sign. I survived the weeping curse. They were laughing, looking at a photo on Liam's phone. They looked fine. Happy. Chloe spotted me. "There you are. What took you so long? We've been waiting for like 10 minutes. Liam looked up and grinned. "Dude, you look like you've seen a ghost. That was awesome, right?" The part with the tilting room was genius. And the animatronic at the end, the one that lunges over the river. Top notch. I stared at them. A tilting room? An animatronic? We'd been in the same maze, but we clearly hadn't been in the same place. "How long was I in there?" I asked. "I don't know, 15, 20 minutes? Chloe said with a shrug. "Standard walkthrough time." We met back up in the room with all the creepy dolls. "You must have taken a different path. Did you see the zombie that pops out of the well?" I just shook my head, a cold numbness spreading through me. A different path. It felt like a different reality. They had gone through a haunted house. I had gone somewhere else. They saw the strings on the puppets. I had seen the puppets come to life. "You're soaking wet," Liam noted, finally noticing my state. "And are you bleeding? Did you fall?" Yeah, I mumbled. "I fell." It was easier than trying to explain I'd broken down a wall to escape a vengeful spirit and her ghost child. They would think I was crazy. Or worse, they'd explain it all away with logic, reducing my ordeal to a series of well-executed tricks. And maybe they were right. But as we walked away, leaving the sound of weeping behind us, I couldn't shake the feeling they were wrong. The drive home was quiet. Liam and Chloe chattered excitedly, ranking every scare, their adrenaline tapering off. I stared out the window, the neon city lights blurring into streaks of color, and said nothing. How do you describe a fear that felt sacred? How do you explain a brush with something that felt ancient and real when you're supposed to be talking about rubber masks and fog machines? I tried once. I mentioned the girl. "Oh yeah, the creepy kid actors," Chloe said. "They had a few of them. So effective. I don't know how they get them to be so still." I mentioned the final chase in the chapel. That was the finale, man, Liam said, his eyes bright. The big set piece. They used projection mapping on the fog to make her look like she was gliding over the water. And the sound tracks you as you move. Dynamic audio targeting. State of the art. I fell silent after that. They had an explanation for everything. A logical, technical, reasonable explanation. They had experienced a marvel of modern horror entertainment. I had experienced something else. Their version of the story made sense. Mine did not. So, I let them believe that my pale face and trembling hands were just the result of a very, very effective show. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake it. I'd be at work, and I would suddenly smell damp earth and river water. I'd see a flash of white in my peripheral vision. I found myself obsessively researching the legend of La Llorona again. Not as a horror fan, but as a witness. I read about the park's creative team, their quest for authenticity, their desire to build a maze that felt like a child's nightmare made real. I couldn't help but wonder if they had succeeded too well. If in their quest to perfectly replicate a myth, they had inadvertently created a vessel for it. If they had built such a perfect cage that something real had decided to move in. It's been weeks. The scrapes on my hands have healed. My jeans are clean. Life is back to its normal rhythm. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I'll hear a sound on the wind. It's probably just a siren, or the brakes of a passing train. It's probably nothing, but it sounds like a woman crying in the dark. That was my experience, and I'll never forget it. Has anything like this ever happened to you? Have you ever been in a situation where you couldn't tell what was real and what was fake? Share your own scary stories in the comments below. I'd love to read them. It helps to know I'm not alone.